Welcome to What It Takes to Lead, a podcast about Mike Sterlacci's faith, family, friendship, and business lessons learned over 40 years of selling insurance and building a rapid growth insurance agency in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. I'm one of your hosts, Leif Hurst, and today I'm joined by my co-host and producer, Charlie Hooper, and Coverica founder and chairman, Mike Sterlacci. How are we doing today, guys?
Doing great.
Doing well, yeah.
Doing
Another
well.
day in the office.
Another day in the office. So we would be remiss to not bring up that this is being recorded the morning after the election.
Right.
And so if we get into politics talk or we get into leadership talk about, different candidates and things like this, it's kind of like what I told I'll give some advice I told my kids last night. Regardless of how the election goes, the country will go on. This is not the end of the world. We will endure. We're stronger than any one candidate. And so whether your party was the one that won or not, this may be a tough time, but we've all felt that, maybe felt that the last election, and maybe you're feeling that to this morning or when you're listening to this. But just know that this too shall pass, and that hopefully whoever the leader is, we can all rally behind them and realize that if we can better the country, that betters everyone that's in it. So that said, just wanted to give you a heads up. We probably will get into a little bit of politics talk. So that said, this is kind of our final episode, quote unquote. There may be another What It Takes to Lead if something big happens and we need to get the mics fired up and have some thoughts put down on audio or video. And so that said, we'll ask some questions kind of at the end, and we'll talk about what the next season of the podcast is going to look like. So that said, I've got a couple of questions. We had our last episode was just kind of a rapid fire, kind of a fun Q&A, and we found out that pineapple and pizza is okay in Mike's book, and so that's good. So I've got a couple of questions here that I wanted to go after, a little more focused on leadership this time. Just to kind of close some things out. So, and Charlie, feel free to pipe in or may slide a question over to you. But
Make us relevant.
Yeah, this is keep us grounded. This is going to be a lot more of a conversation episode. So Mike, something I wanted to get you to dive into a little bit is what do you think has defined your success as a leader? Do you think it's running to the fire? Do you think it's intuition? Do you think it's just to kind of survey the landscape? What do you think is the defining success as a leader? Because you weren't born into this. You weren't trained to be this. This is what you call the crucible of leadership.
That's a good question, and we talked a little bit about some of this prior to the podcast starting. I think if I were to say what was it, it's first and foremost, it's the perseverance of realizing that there are going to be challenges, ongoing challenges, and just dealing with them and making decisions and moving forward. And if there is failure, pivoting to deal with the collateral damage and keep moving forward. So I think it's the resolve. I also think that I've determined over so many years that I am wired different than other people, but we're all wired differently for different reasons. One of the conversations that we've had is articulated very well by the Culture Index, our different personalities. And kind of a side note and a challenge that I've had is when somebody wants to be something that they're not hardwired to be, it can be a very frustrating experience. And I would rather see people focus in on what they are good at and do that well, and not feel that they're somehow inadequate because they can't do something that perhaps I did or somebody else did. But I think it's the perseverance. It is recognizing that you have an issue, and instead of taking it personal and saying, well, this isn't right or this isn't fair, or that's all wasted energy. The question becomes the reason for the 4 precepts. First of all, die to self, get out of the way, and what is the actual facts that you're dealing with to the best of your ability. And that's when you have friends of virtue that you can talk to that can say, well, I don't agree that that's a fact, but figure out to the best of your ability what the facts are. And then I call it the sufficiency rule, where if it's 70%, probably you feel that that is the facts, then you can go to the second precept, which is everybody's best sustainable interest. What does that mean? That means that the decision you make, you need to take into consideration all of the other people, whether they be customers, other employees, the insurance companies, vendors, friends, community. Is the decision that you're about to make in any way harmful to any of those people? So think, at least give some thought to that. And the greater the decision you make that benefits other people, it will sustain itself and be a good move. The third one, right thing, right reasons. And I'm a broken record about that. That's why I'm a believer, because I've got 66 books as reference. And if you don't have some kind of hardcore right and wrong that you can draw from, then it becomes a subjective decision. And then the most important is open, honest dialogue. Sitting down with people and saying, this isn't working. Let's talk about it, which is how we have developed the 3 ways of dealing with employees, help them find contentment and in the work that they're doing, and using their God-given talents to work well. And if they want to make more money or they want a different position in the company, help them figure out what the KPIs are for them to get those jobs or that improvement or what have you. And the third one is, I don't like the 3-strike rule. So if it's evident that we don't have the position that you need to pursue, or you don't want to do what it's going to take to achieve that goal, then let's help you build your resume to get you work someplace else. So going back to the one single thing is, it's perseverance. It's not giving up on a challenge or a problem and trying to figure out, or rather figuring out, what will work, and then allowing yourself to fail and pivot and get up and dust off and try again.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, something that I've noticed with you, and something, probably one of the biggest things I've learned is when you check your ego out of it, every kind of scenario you're faced with, all- it doesn't have to be about you winning. It doesn't have to be about them winning. There's a middle ground in between there. It's like, don't get stuck in like the choices are binary. It's either A or B. There's a whole world of gray there in the middle that we could both get what we want, and we could concede some things that may not be that big of a deal. As an example, we were just looking at a contract for Ansel with a client we were bringing on, and it was like, look, this thing that is a big deal to them is not really that big of a deal to us.
So concede the point.
Concede the point, and let's figure out a way to move forward.
Well, that's excellent point. I would add a little bit to that, and that is, as a believer, I'm serving an audience of one. But let's take it for a secular perspective, and that is, what really matters is what you think of yourself. That's more important than what other people think. So when you get into a situation where um, you're stressed between, well, this and that, and just what will make you feel that you did the best you could and that you're proud of the decision that you made, irrespective of the collateral damage that may ensue from that.
Right.
So it's what are you doing that you're going to be proud of?
Beautiful.
Can I ask, you were talking about kind of the wiring of a leader um, that leads you to success. What kind of things do you feel are hardwired?
First and foremost is risk tolerance.
Mm.
When I'm making decisions, and I heard this from, I think his last name was Tesh, from the Lowe's corporation that owned the Anatole and I think Movado watch, and anyway, very, very wealthy. He was talking at a convention that CNA hosted, and he made the comment, whenever he's making a decision, he says, "What's the worst case scenario, and can they afford it?"
Mm.
That's the first thing that he asks himself. And he made kind of a interesting comment about they invested in a fiber to be laid between Europe and America, and it was going to be the second communicative type fiber, and it was going to be a $50 million investment. And they thought, well, 50 million, it has a great upside to it, so let's go ahead and take the risk. And he's laughing when he's saying the story. He says, because, we sold it for $500 million. And
Right.
everybody thought what a brilliant move it was on my part. And he says, no, it really wasn't. It was 50 million. And if I could have sold it when it was 75 million, I would have. But there was an agreement in the contract that we had to hold it for a period of time before we could sell it. And so the first opportunity we could sell it was worth $500 million. So he'll take credit for that, and he made a lot of money on it. But the point being that what he was modest in that, look, it's not, I just looked at what was the downside. So every lawsuit that we've had, every employee that we've terminated, every action that we've taken, we look at it very soberly and say, what's the worst that can happen? This is the first point of parking your ego, dying to self. What is it? What are we looking at? So I tell people, producers in particular was one example of it. We were in litigation, and I said, we can settle this for $80,000. And they were saying, oh, well, we should fight it. We should fight it. And I says, well, what you need to know is that if we fight this, it's going to take at least 2 years and probably cost $250,000. And I said, I have a question for you. This person that we're thinking about having this protracted lawsuit and spending all this money, when we can end it today for $80,000 and you guys can carry on with your lives, will this person put a spin on it so that they will make everyone else believe that they actually won, even if the court rules in our favor? And they said, yeah, that's who he is. That's exactly what he's going to do. So does it make sense to do that? You can't get to those kind of decisions unless you do die to self and get out of the way. And then you do think in terms of what's in everybody's best sustainable interest. Clearly, the best sustainable interest for these producers was to get this over with so they could focus in on building their books of business. And it's best for our company because we just saved a lot of money by not spending $250,000 in 2 years of anger and anguish and headaches. Now, there are times that you have to sue. There are times you have to take action, and sometimes it takes a long time. But you must know, like I said earlier, what is the cost? At least a couple of years and $250,000. And we just wrapped up a lawsuit recently that came probably $300,000 in almost 2 years. But we won, so it was worth it. But at the end of the day, it's a very sober approach to life that most people don't really think about all of the repercussions without dying to self, without applying the precepts.
Is there a scenario that you can think of to where like you got into a lawsuit because of principle and you had to pull yourself back of like, this isn't the right,
Well,
I know I'm right.
Well, okay,
but
that gets back to the hard wiring, because that is exactly what happened in the earlier lawsuit I mentioned, where we were settling knowing that, in a sense, you could make the argument we're condoning bad behavior on the other party. Well, this is where running a business is not like a fairy tale, or it's not the good guy wins. It's not. There would be believers that would say it's confronting Scripture and what it says, and I would say that's because they have an immature view of what Scripture is really saying. Nowhere in there does it say that you should be a doormat. There is righteous anger. But the point is, yes, have I felt that way? Absolutely, and I have to fight myself. But the way that I look at things makes that easier for me than it does for other people. There are other people that just can't do it, and I would suggest that those people that couldn't do it need to figure out what are their God-given talents and how do they best apply them, because it's certainly not going to be as a leader of a company. Listen, if I wasn't wired this way, it would be stupid for me to do what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, what in the world am I doing?
Yeah. And it's kind of the adage of, well, this is the hill I'm going to die on. At the end of it, you're still dead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly, that's one of those questions where, the question is, if somebody held a gun to your head and said, are you a believer? I'd like to think I would say yes, and they wouldn't kill me. But there was I think it was Columbine, where there was a little girl that was killed that said that.
Yeah.
But the point being that let's say that I said, okay, I'm not a believer because I want to live. One is we have forgiveness. So even if I did something stupid, which I do a lot of stupid things, I know that I'm forgiven. So that's one of those things, until you're in the situation, you don't know. But risk tolerance is way up in the charts. Also, too, another one is, there's a quote by, and I mentioned that earlier in the conversation we were having to Charlie about Theodore Roosevelt's quote about the arena, and it's not the critic, it's the person in the arena fighting. You have to have a personality where you will fight the fight, and you're okay with it. I mean, guys that are into sports like football. I mean, think about it. You got to, you're going after the quarterback to sack him. Some people don't have that kind of, whatever you want, fire in the gut or whatever it is to do that. Well, if you don't have that, you shouldn't be playing football, right?
Yeah, yeah, but for the man in the arena, it's I mean, for every one Aaron Rodgers, there's a 5,000 journalists saying he made the wrong play.
That's right. You have that too. And also too, let's be realistic. The fact is, I have a lot of shortcomings, and only when you can die to yourself do you see what they are. And that's where I need other people. That's why I'm so blessed to have Heidi, because I will tell you, you could make the argument I'm a social misfit. There's so much that I do that is offensive to people, and I'm not even aware that I am. But she'll say, no, you can't say that, and no, don't do that. And so I've learned over the years to listen to her. I mean, at her 60th birthday, we had a chart made of the things that people love about Heidi. And one of them was kind of funny because it says, quite frankly, Heidi is probably the only person that Mike listens to. Well, now, some people could get upset about that, but I know that that's a pretty true statement. I mean, if she's saying it, I better listen to it. And she would say, well, Mike doesn't listen. And that's true too. So the reason, she says, why do you not listen? I says, because if it's important to you, Heidi, I'm going to hear it more than once.
Right.
So I can, if the notes start to have similarity, I say, okay, I better zone in on what she's talking about. But you see, that's what's so great about, at least in our marriage, is that we accept each other, warts and all, for who we are. So risk tolerance is a big part of it. And also you have to have that drive to endure the hardship that is going to come because of the decisions you make. When they say it's lonely at the top, that's what they're talking about. Think about Harry Truman making the decision to kill 150,000 innocent Japanese people to end a war that would save millions of lives. The movie portrayed him as he was kind of a jerk to Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
I think they mischaracterized him. He knew that he had to do this because the Germans were working on the bomb too. And if they had it first, because Oppenheimer, oh, well, we better not do this, it's going to kill people, then we would all be speaking German.
Right.
Under a terrible regime. So those are some of the other parts of it too. And the other thing is too, and this is a mistake that a lot of people make, is that perception that somehow I either think I'm better or that I am better than the average Joe. And we are all on equal footing. All of us. It's just, you got to figure out what is it that you can do that's great, that's really unique, that's powerful. What is it? Is it teaching kids? No, they're not going to make as much money as a CEO of a company, but they're affecting lives. So in what currency are you judging people being better than others? I have a lot of contemporaries that have, with their wealth and what they're doing with it. To me, that's kind of missing the mark. So
I love the video that you sent me of the guy that's living on, what does he make? He's making like $1 million.
Oh, was it Bernhard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Here's a guy who gave away $21 million last year from his company. They have over 1,000 employees, 500 cranes, and they're hauling like 400,000 tons of equipment. And he lives with $150,000 a year budget. That's it. And the video shows him packing his lunch, kissing his wife goodbye, leaving a modest home to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
He loves his work. He loves the game. Here's a guy that gets it. I mean, he's kingdom building in his own right with his wealth, but he's happy living the life that he's living. That's the goal.
Right.
The goal is to find that peace which passes understanding. And how do you do that? Well, my hope is that if people will take the risk and follow the precepts, I mean, really follow them, they'll find that it gets easier when you do it. It's like quitting smoking or working out. You have to do it for a period of time before it becomes something that really is worth doing, or that you can do it with routine. It becomes a good habit.
No. Switching gears for a second. This is you might have to ponder on this one for a second, but you're pretty good at rooting this out. Um, what does failure in a leader look like? Like when you're talking with another head of a company or somebody that is, maybe a politician, or I mean, it's like what are the qualities where in your brain you're just kind of like this guy ain't got it, or this lady she's not going to be able to do this.
You took a curve on me there. I was thinking that the failure from the leader himself or herself.
Like
So,
what traits do they start exhibiting to where you're just like this is not working?
well, I would say the and that I have thought about that a lot because I've been asked that question before. I think what it is, I'm trying to figure out a way to say it um, non-offensively. When people are not honest with themselves, that's the first precept: die to self. What does that really mean? It means, who am I? What are my strengths, weaknesses, my core capacity? What is my culture index? What do people think about me? What do people say about me? And the open and honest with one's self. That's why I don't like the 3 strike rule. Because let's face it, if somebody's not doing their job well, there's only a few reasons why they wouldn't be doing their job well. But if they're not doing their job well and you're just setting up this 3 ways to prove them that they're failing so you can fire them, so you don't have to worry about repercussions with human resources or being sued or unemployment. But realistically, let's go back further where it's a failure. It would be a failure when that person can't do what the job requires them to do for whatever reason. Uh, and not to mention names, but when we have had sales directors, um, it's the role of the coach to the player. Uh, Trying to think of the Notre Dame coach. He made the comment about how did they have such a winning coach? Lou Holtz. Yeah. Lou Holtz, thank you. Lou Holtz is the guy. And his joy came from coaching, of seeing players do well. So he had certain guardrails, one of which is if somebody did something like if they were caught after curfew, got drunk, he'd kick them off the team, irrespective of the effect it would have on the whole team, because he understood it's a team sport. And if he allowed somebody to violate the moral fabric of a team, he would eliminate them. And so there's a reason why Chuck Swindoll refers to Jerry Jones as the clown.
That's where I was going with it when you said coach. I was like, sometimes it's not the coach.
Yeah. How do you fire an owner? Well, you don't. So I think that when anybody is failing in their position, if they're in an environment like what we have, to where we're not interested in figuring out ways to fire you. We're figuring out ways, how can we help you find your God-given talents here and it still work? It's not going to be something that everybody's going to love and be passionate about. I mean, that's just not real. Is the work that you're doing rewarding? Is it feeding something in you that gives you the endurance to get up every day and go to work? If it's not, are you lying to yourself? Are you just doing it for the money? I had one producer say he hates insurance and he hates selling insurance. And if somebody says they like selling insurance, they're lying to you. But this particular person was making a lot of money and doing very well. Well, he didn't recognize the poverty in what he was saying.
Right.
I mean, you only have so much time on this earth. This isn't a dress rehearsal. So if you're doing work you absolutely hate, why? Uh, it's just wrong. I mean, it's just not. You're not going to have any kind of a life of joy and contentment. So I admire people that some of the happiest people I know have nothing. I mean, I have cousins that live in Appalachia, Wellston, Ohio. And when the coal mines close down and they're put out of work, they're eking out a living on their farms and doing odd jobs here and there. And they're very happy. It's like, how is that possible? And yet I know people that make 7 figures a year and they're trying to impress other people with how wealthy they are. So clearly there's a misconnection there. So getting back to the failure, when you see somebody is really struggling in their job, it's kind of cruel to not discuss it with them to help them feel maybe something else would be better for you, or maybe another company would be better for you. Let's explore that. Let's do it above board. Let's not do it in a way that you feel like you got to sneak around. And I think that's powerful, not just for that person, but it's powerful for the other employees as well as the leaders that are saying, I really care about you enough to help you figure out where can you be great. Because here's the trick with, like Lou Holtz figured out. When you have a team that really cares about each other, that really works and operates as a team, Notre Dame had a great record with him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if they had some individual stars because they hired this person because he was really good, if he's not a good person, it's not sustainable. And we've had people in leadership positions in this company over the last 32 years that didn't work out. And so then you can criticize me for making those decisions of hiring them, but you got to give people enough time to prove that they can't do the job, because you don't know what's going to turn to make them more successful. That's why they say it's lonely at the top, is you allow yourself to get alone and think about, okay, at what point is it a failure and it's not going to work, and then have the strength to have that very tough conversation.
I mean, just kind of expanding on that, just kind of taking the other direction of that is, as a leader, like, do you ever stop and recognize that's like, hey, we did the right thing there? Or is it just like, do you ever like reflect on the win as a leader? Or is it just kind of like, hey, where's the next fire?
That's another good question. I was honored to get a phone call from one of our ISMs, and I won't mention the name. And he called me up and he said, Mike, this has nothing to do with business. I just want to pick your brain about how do I deal with a certain type of person in a very difficult situation for me personally. So we talked for quite a while, and he said to me, he says, Mike, will I ever be in a position when I can look at life like you do? And I said, well, for one thing, I've had 70 years of a rough road, and I've made a lot of stupid mistakes, and hopefully I've learned from them. So the answer to your question is, you haven't been through enough hell yet to get to that point, is the simple answer. And so a lot of older people get frustrated with younger people, but they haven't had the life experiences. So to answer your question a little bit more directly, that's one of the nice things about, at least for me and my faith, is that I will once in a while stumble onto something like that phone call that reminds me that, I am making a difference.
Right.
That there is some good coming out of my efforts. Now, to your other question, Heidi would say that, yes, I'm always looking for problems. I'm always creating challenges, like we just finished remodeling Dallas, our house, and our rental Florida house, and getting ready to start on another house. I mean, I do love that.
Right.
To me, it's not chaotic. I just love it. I'm a frustrated architect, and now I can do these things, and I can afford to do these things, and so I'm having fun with that. So you could say that I'm looking for the next disaster, because there's always disasters. You're going to have permit issues. You're going to have until you open up that wall, you don't really know what's behind it, and that's going to create a problem where you're going to have to make decisions. And that's where pivoting and perseverance pays off in spades. But yes, there have been along the road very positive things that are give me great satisfaction. There are other things that I know I'll be dead and gone before I really, that's the thing about a eulogy. Work on your eulogy, not your resume. The fact is that for the most part, most people never really know the good that they did until, well, they never know. You go to a lot of funerals and you'll see people getting up and saying, how much they love this person, how much they cared about this person, and the influence that they had on their lives. And of course, the bigger the gathering is at their funeral, the know is how many lives they affected. But did they tell them?
Right.
Gene Getz he's a pastor here in the Dallas area that was telling people that go to church, once in a while, pull the pastor aside and tell them how you've helped them or how you've been a positive influence on their lives, because they need the feedback. They need the positives. Now, when you have a personality like I have, a lot of people say, "Oh, he's too busy," or he's too self-grandizing, or he thinks he's better than other people, whatever. And so those people won't approach me. When somebody has a kind word to say, what you said really proved to be true. And those are really great. And it doesn't go to my head. My mother was always negative because she didn't want me to turn out like my dad, because my dad was always self-grandizing. And that's, I'm not as charismatic as him. He's kind of people wouldn't know David Niven and Frank Sinatra, but if you look them up, they were, like kind of quality, fun people. And Dad had that magnetism.
Your dad would hold court.
Yes, that's right. You knew him. He would hold court. Well, but there wasn't as much substance to him as he would lead you to believe. And, I'm a realist and I loved my dad very much, but I could see him for what he was. That was part of his makeup to prop himself up. And that's okay. I mean, we all have our shortcomings. I certainly have more than enough. But the point is that when we talk about the crucible of leadership, or we talk about people that can run companies, it really comes down to a person's ability to deal with adversity and keep forging ahead. I would say that as a rule, now there's always exceptions, for somebody to be able to run a company, if they have a strong family, it's proof that they could probably do it. Because we all know, those of us that are married, there are going to be tough times. There's going to be all kinds of issues. So when I'm looking at future leadership, I'm looking at people that have been able to hold a family together. That's not easy. I didn't do it. I got divorced, and I have my oldest son is somewhat estranged. We have a good relationship, but we're not as close as I would like us to be. So it's you just dust off and you keep moving. It's the perseverance. It's the risk tolerance. It's the ability to stay hyper focused on your goal and not everything around you. I mean, if you're listening to all of the pundits, you'll never go anywhere. You'll never make a decision.
It's funny. We mentioned Aaron Rodgers earlier, and there was a quote that I heard from him on a podcast, and I'm sure he stole it from someone else. So if somebody knows where to attribute
Now,
this
there's
to.
nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun. But his quote was, never accept criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from.
That's good.
It's good.
That's good.
Made me think of that whenever you're talking about Heidi. It's just like there's a lot of critics, but it's like, man, I wouldn't come to you to ask advice if you're the last person on earth.
Well,
so why do we listen to those?
That's because we're human.
Yeah.
We want to be liked. We want to be socially acceptable. We want to be invited to parties. Everybody's happy on Facebook. We want to be like those people. They're always happy. Now, interestingly enough, we talked about the hardwired. I've noticed this about myself. My whole life, when somebody would make fun of me or criticize me, I was always curious as to what led up to that, as opposed to taking it personally. And I didn't realize what, Garrett referred that as a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't affect me like it affects perhaps other people. So that's another consideration of, well, things affect me a certain way. It's preposterous to think it's going to affect other people the same way. So therefore, let's dig into the why, how, and what. Why did that happen? Why was that comment made? Why Is that an issue? And then how do I choose to deal with it? And then what actions do I take? And to your point, if it's somebody that you don't respect, then you just dismiss it.
Right.
Allow yourself to just dismiss it. If you see, what is it saying that if one person says it, it may or may not be true. If two people say it, you probably ought to think about it. And if three people say the same thing that are not connected to each other, it's probably real.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's like no one's ever criticized me to. You're not going to say anything to me I hadn't said to myself in the mirror already.
Yeah.
And so it's something to it's like, yeah, I'm going to listen to you, but I want to make sure that I'm hearing this from the right person.
And is it something that you even need to change?
Right.
Heidi's Aunt Struss, my Aunt Struss, would say, Mike, you really say things that can really piss people off. And I said, I know that, Struss. I said, but okay, Batman, solve this riddle. How is it that some people love me for being obnoxious like this and other people can't stand it? Which one's right? Ron Rhodes is a dear friend of mine. I was telling him, I come across kind of strong, and I felt bad because in our Bible study, I'll say some provocative things from time to time. He says, Mike, don't you dare change who you are. We don't have to agree with you, but we need you to feel free to say what you say. And that's discourse.
No. And I think where it gets misinterpreted is when somebody doesn't know the intent or the character behind you.
That's it.
That's behind it. Yeah, I remember 2 or 3 years into working here, I walked in one day and Randy Renz goes, "Man, you're really packing on the weight." And I just remember
That's Randy.
Part of me is just like, man, you a-hole. But then part of me is just like, he cares about me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so the funny thing is Randy would have said that to somebody you met that week. That's just who he was.
And see, but you saw that.
Right.
You didn't get offended by it and then, oh gosh, what's wrong with me? And you said, well, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
And then you started thinking about it and say, well, I do have a weight issue here, and but then you started looking at Andy and got to know him, and as you got to know, that is another pearl of wisdom that I've learned over 70 years. Abraham Lincoln once said about I think the chief of staff was telling him to fire a certain general that hated Abraham Lincoln's guts. I hated him. It's in his book. Well, it doesn't matter. It'll come to me. But he says it's better to get closer to that person. I need to get closer to that person. And what a radical statement that somebody that hated his guts, he wanted to get closer to. Team of Rivals. That's the name of the book. It's a little bit slower to come up with things at 70, but that's what it was. Team of Rivals. That's a fabulous book about leadership. Here is a president that literally hired and brought into his cabinet people that hated his guts.
Book Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Hey, you might be 70, but you're faster than ChatGPT. So.
For now.
Yeah, for now. Oh, that's funny. Kind of ending on this. What is the greatest story that you have seen of somebody coming out of the crucible of leadership?
Well, I would say Trump. I mean, as much of an ass as he is, and I would not want him to a dinner party. It reminds me of what they used to say about Jimmy Johnson. Boy, you wouldn't want to have dinner with him or have him as a neighbor, but you sure loved him as a coach.
Right.
Because he was brilliant at what he did. I think that for Trump to, with all of his flaws, he made it his mission to get reelected. And I would say part of it is to just prove that he wasn't a bad person or that he was, because he is a populist. He's really not a conservative and he's not a liberal. He is a populist. And that perseverance of who at I'm 70, he's 78, 79, something like that. Who would want to put in the time, energy, and money and resources when you know half of the country hate your guts? A lot of people didn't want Trump because they hated him. And to be able to say, no, I'm going to do this. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but Barbara Walters interviewed him years ago.
Glowing. Same with
years
Oprah.
ago.
Yeah.
Well, no, no. Where I was going with this is he even said back then, which was probably 40 years ago, that he would be president if he really felt that the country needed him. So there are people like Trump, whether we like him or not. Winston Churchill's another one. Winston Churchill knew that he was destined to be prime minister when he was in his 20s. Now, that's not me by a long shot, but there are great leaders out there that have lived their lives. I mean, here's Winston Churchill. The king was scared to death of him in the movie, said, I'm afraid of you. And they hated him. And to prove the point, after they had won the war, thank God, Charles Krauthammer talks about that, we talk about these other people being great. And it should be Winston Churchill. He saved democracy for the world. This one alcoholic, he was self-medicating because he was clinically depressed. He would refer to his depression as a black dog. He would drink a pint of booze every day to be able to function. What hardship did he have? But as a kid, he knew he was destined for greatness. Well, was he a popular guy? Did people like him? No, they fired him after the war was over.
Right.
So that's why when you hear things like, what does it really mean to be lonely at the top? He was pretty much alone. He fought the fight many times all by himself. He had an unwavering commitment to democracy. In the 20s, he was saying that Hitler was a bad dude and needed to get rid of him. And by the way, he wasn't one of the first ones. Actually, I said 20s. No, it was probably the 30s for Churchill. Boy, here goes my brain again. Hildebrand was an American. He had left Germany, and Bonhoeffer. In the 20s, they were saying how bad Hitler was and needed to get rid of him. If people had listened to them then, millions of lives would have been spared.
Right.
So they had to live with the fact that they knew that they were right, but nobody would take action to take them out. So in our little world of Coverica and a small, probably in this grand scope of thing, insignificant company compared to other companies, it's very important to me that we operate this company, that it transcend and operate long after I'm gone with the precept that you can run a business to where people benefit from its existence. And they can work there and know that they can live out their God-given talents without the threat of pronouns, of wokeism, or all this other crap that's being shoved down everybody's throat. Now, how long it lasts, that's up to, like what Benjamin Franklin said, "Madam, you have a republic as long as you can hold on to it." So in conclusion of our 20th episode, what I want people to hear about Coverica is, it's not as grandiose as the American dream, which was just a theory when it started, that can man govern themselves. But it's an opportunity for people to get involved in this company and be a stockholder in this company and make certain that it continues to thrive into the future and deal with the hardships that come with work, but understand that's all part of the building of a good organization, regardless of your faith, regardless of your age. The fact is here's a place that you can help make to be a better place. As far as me and Heidi, we'll eventually have to ride off in the sunset because we're not designed to last 200 years. And I'm thankful that God didn't tap me on the shoulder like he did Moses at 80 to start the journey with the Jews for 40 years. But the point is that I've done my part to tee it up for the next subsequent generations. And so you asked an earlier question about knowing that I did something good. And yeah, I think Coverica is good. There's a lot of really good people here. And I feel a sense of obligation to those people. Now, Jesus would say, when you throw out the seeds, only 25% of them are going to make it. If only 25% of this company of close to 100 people are really willing to take this company to the next level, that's a beautiful thing. And I did my part.
Beautiful. Transitioning to that, now that you're on the backside of the transition, you've been talking about this since the day I interviewed here. So now that it's executing and it's on the bell curve, you're on the back half.
Right.
how do you feel? Is it less anxiety? Is it less? Is it something that you feel a weight's taken off your shoulders that this is now
Well, clearly today, yes.
right?
I don't know what's in store for me the next curve, but I will tell you we've signed the engagement to find my replacement. We finally landed on a staffing company that I know quite well, and can operate within the parameters and the bumper guards that we have. We now have three very good, strong minded, successful producers that are running the sales direction for the company into the future. My three musketeers, John, Rhonda, and Andy, are comfortable in being matriarchs and patriarchs of the company so that they can be part of my inner circle once Coverica is run by a different company. I've got the people that are going to be on the board, which you're one of them, and I've already cautioned you on what my concern is for you. But we've got a really solid board with three external people, two internal people, which Rhonda and the new CEO will report to. So, yes, right now I feel very, very positive and very good about it. I do have, where do I go from here? Bill Kushner said, Mike, you're the only one that doesn't think you should write a book. And so probably entertain that more deeply. I asked Isaac to send me all of the podcasts where they're transcripted so I can
Hmm.
read them. So that gives me a good way to write. But I know that's going to be a 2 or 3 year project. Working with you and Tony on Ansel, working as a chairperson for Coverica with the new CEO, helping Chris. He wanted to keep me as 49% owner in the Alliance. We're wrapping up our captive. It's dormant now. And we have Karis, which is our commercial property. We're talking to the neighbors to see if they will sell us the building. So I have an awful lot to.
Don't forget Coverica Cares.
Oh, Coverica. Now
Yeah.
that is the big one. That actually that's where Rhonda's going to go when her time is up here as CEO. She's going to help us on the board for the charitable giving,
Oh, I love that.
which is that is I got to tell you there is we're dealing with a Morrison Forster who set up the perpetuation plan for Patagonia. So we've hired them to help us with the perpetuation plan for Coverica to make certain that the governance is in place so that can in fact not only be achieved but pass the IRS muster on how we do that. So in a very, very good place that I've never experienced before. So I'm happy about that. But now the difference, I guess, basically is I can pick and choose my battles. And I ask for the wisdom to know, the serenity prayer. Tell me what I can change and what I can't change and what I need to accept. Actually, I put in a plug for Kim Humphreys, who's a psychologist that I started seeing her with Heidi on and off over the years. Because a friend of mine told me that he went when they were having, actually interesting, he told me that he went to see Kim with his wife when they were having marital problems. And I said, well, you're not having marital problems. He says, no. What we decided and we agreed to that we would go every year for a checkup. And I thought, well, yeah, I
Oh,
go
that's
for
cool.
go
Yeah.
for a physical checkup. So I reached out to Kim, and so Heidi and I go talk to Kim, and so we met her and we're talking. About a half an hour into it, she says, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, Kim, I want you to have a baseline. This is as good as it's going to get for me and Heidi right now.
Right.
So we know that things are going to, and boy, did they happen. I mean, Chris's divorce, Mike's divorce, special needs. My granddaughter has a learning challenge. She's not bipolar. She's ADHD and dyslexic,
Hmm.
and so she's going to school right across the street. But so going through that anyway, so I've been talking to her and enjoying her help with different things, and so look, there's always going to be good things and bad things and challenges, but surround yourself with friends of virtue. You've heard me talk about that. And these are people that love you in spite of what you are and who you are. They know who you are, and they're going to tell you, well, that was a real bonehead move that you just did, Mike. Yeah, you're right. But you'll listen to those people.
Right. Right.
So I'm at a place now where I've got good friends, solid friends, and I love them dearly, and they love me, believe it or not. It's not the golden years, the retirement years. I mean, yeah, now I have arthritis and I have issues that I didn't used to have anymore. But I will tell you, I would not trade for any of my. I wouldn't trade with you guys for your age. I'm telling you, you have a lot of people say, "Oh, I wish youth is wasted on the young." No, it's not. Youth is to teach you how to get old gracefully, or to have a fulfilled life, which you're only going to go through if you have a lot of headaches and problems that you figured out how to solve and you persevered.
Right. Right.
So it's good. I mean, it's not all good. It's hassles. At my age, I have a lot of friends that, oddly enough, the wives are dying off. Used to be, it was
Yeah.
supposedly the guy that's going to die, but here lately, in the last 5, it was the wives that predeceased. Even our renter in Florida, who she was probably 12 to 15 years younger, she died.
Oh, wow.
But he's still going to rent our house for the 6 months because he wants to get away from. I guess he's from Minnesota.
Well, guys, just reflecting on the last 20 episodes of this, did this accomplish what you thought it would be? How did this change from what you thought it would be? I'll go first if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
I mean, the whole point for me of doing this was to figure out a way to get the things that you've taught me and that I've seen you teach other people here in a format that people can easily consume, and maybe it is the outline of a book, is what this was, is 20 episodes of us kind of talking through what the outline of the book is, or for us to say, what is the what are the greatest hits that we need to make sure we cover in the book, but also that there's a resource to where friends and family and people can listen to you for generations. And to me, that was a place. We were always having these conversations over lunch or over the water cooler or halfway in your door to your office. And, it's just like, let's get this out to the staff. Let's get this out to people. Let's hear what's on Mike's heart and what's on Mike's mind, and what Mike's learned about. And I just want to appreciate, tell you thank you for opening up and showing the world your thoughts and ideas and your soul, and how spirituality has guided you through this, and same to you and Heidi and everybody else that came on through the podcast. So I'm very happy with where we are. This isn't going to be the last podcast, but this might be the last podcast in this kind of format. So we can talk about that.
Well, thank you very much. That's very, very kind. How about Charlie? You want to take
Yeah.
a counter view? I think you're a jerk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this whole time you wouldn't want to read what the notes I've been taking. Are. No. Damn, I'm really being put on the spot for an answer here, but I definitely think over the last 20 episodes, and I wasn't present for probably like 2 or 3 of them, but I think I've gotten a lot deeper of an understanding of the way you think, the way that you see business should be ran. And then a lot of, as I intend to stay here and contribute to Coverica and be a leader, what I should be doing. It's pretty scary. We're talking about ownership and how everyone's an owner. And, I want to make some big moves and make Coverica a great place to work. But with that and the responsibility that comes with it, there's always the chance of, excuse my language, but fucking it up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the strength of our size and our duration, is that we can get up and fight the next fight. I mean, we're in a very hard market. We've been through it before. But it's only a mistake if you didn't learn from it and you don't move forward from it. So I'm honored too that I mean, what you said, Leaf, is very, very touching. Make sure I hold it together. But Charlie, what is encouraging is that you cared enough to listen. And we are, good grief, 50 years apart? I mean,
I think so.
I'm
yeah.
quite a bit older than you. And I've been told that usually it's 20 years your junior or your senior that you can even relate to. So the fact that you've gotten anything out of it is good. It's kind of a surreal experience. I don't take myself so serious. I mean, I remember Alistair Cook's quote about never lose sight of what you were designed to do. And in Scripture, it even talks about live quiet lives and be productive. Give the government its due. When Jesus says, give to Caesar what's Caesar's, give to God what's God. Clearly pointing out that we are to live in harmony. And what I'd like my legacy to be is that you can grow a business well to make a good profit and to bless others in the process, to where people are not at odds with each other. It is possible, and we're a functioning model that is proving that. It's a dear friend of mine. He actually was one of the people that I asked to be a friend of virtue, is George Flint. And he says, no, Mike, you'd wear me out. And he actually is going to start, he's going to be our in-house counsel starting in January.
I love that you'll have that here. Like that.
That's so cool. Yeah.
Just
and
George
actually,
himself.
he's going to be building a mediation business within our structure. So that's proof once again that he is coming to work here to be our in-house counsel for, say, give or take 20 hours a week. But he also is going to be given the opportunity to build something that's on his heart, which is a mediation business. And as a retired judge, it should be pretty easy because he knows a lot of lawyers.
Right.
So that's an example of he's using his God-given talents, and Coverica is going to help him with part of it.
But to my earlier point, you could have looked at that like, well, if he doesn't come on full time, it's a failure.
Yeah, that's right.
And for him, it's like, well, if I don't exercise this entrepreneurial thing I want to do, it's a failure.
Yeah.
And so it's like, no, you found it somewhere in the middle. We can all win from this.
That is the point of the precepts, to get to the open, honest dialogue. Let's talk about what's on your heart, what's on my heart, what's the best interest of all of us going forward. And that is pretty awesome, and it's very, very powerful. So at this phase of life, what is the best part of it all is to have lived long enough to see it come to fruition. That what was a concept, it didn't start that way. I mean, I didn't, and you've heard on some of the other podcasts, I never wanted to own a business. And I joke and say I still don't. But, I'm uniquely qualified to do what I do. And so passing that on and putting the measurements in place, or the aids in place to keep it going, I think is really phenomenal. And to be able to at least see it at this stage is really, really life-giving and just a wonderful thing. So thank you guys that had enough interest to see this through. Because given my own, I probably never would have done it.
Love it.
So that's it.
All right, and there may be another podcast coming.
Oh, there will be. It'll just be different, phasing differently, I guess.
Yeah, maybe something a little more topical, a little more current event. And I look forward to hearing it and being a part of it, and
Yeah, and if we could have people, if they would reach out to us and let us know if there is something that they're interested in hearing, or a direction that we might pursue, we're open to that.
Yeah, just reach out to us at podcast@coverica.com. So, gentlemen, with that said, I feel like it's signing off on the last day of the year, and the broadcast at the end of, what do they always say? Good night, and go into that dark, what's the famous quote?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so that said, thank you again for listening and here with us at What It Takes to Lead. We've enjoyed having you along for our journey, and we look forward to one day hearing about yours. So, with that said, I'm getting emotional. Like, what's going on here? I may have to redo this. I get touched a little too much. So anyway, we look forward to hearing about your journey and your story of faith, leadership, and your successful families. So with that said, we'll sign off.